friend, Representative Walter Hudson.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, that's been bugging me watching people the whole time with this court. First of all, James Lindsay. That's serious. That's exciting. That's an opportunity. You know, I often hear people say things along the lines of, we don't have any George Washingtons or Thomas Jeffersons or Thomas Paines. We don't have these lofty figures anymore, these founding fathers who we can rely on to fight the intellectual fight. Well, James Lindsay is one of those guys. And so if you get the opportunity, by all means, it's free, take it. Really excited to hear from him on Wednesday. Usually I'm off the cuff with these sorts of things, but today I felt as though it was worth some prayerful precision, so I went ahead and wrote some things down. And some of this stuff, at this point, first of all, thank you for your endurance. Those of you who've been standing this whole time, it's not easy, but you've hung in there, and I appreciate it. But at this point, in a rally, in a series of speeches, you start to hear things kind of repeated. And a lot of what I have to say is going to be an echo of what Pastor Steve said earlier. So apparently that peripheral precision meant repetition on top of everything else, right? So here we go. I have a question for you today. And I want you to pause and really think about it. Don't just go with the first thing that pops into your head. Really reflect upon the actual answer to this question. Do you feel free today? Do you feel free? Do you sense that you are enabled to live your life according to your values, in pursuit of your goals, without fear of having what's yours taken or being unable to sustain a good life for your family? I'll tell you how I feel. And what I see as I look around us and as I travel across the state, I see people struggling to appear as though they are not struggling. I see people keeping up appearances as they quietly take withdrawals from their retirement accounts, discreetly take out another mortgage, charge their groceries to their credit card, pray that they don't have to fix their car or change their tires, replace their tires. I see people who don't know what tomorrow will bring and don't know how they can reasonably be expected to endure. And these people like you, people like me, these people are not bums. They're not criminals, they're not ne'er-do-wells, they're not lazy or irresponsible. These are working people. These are people who have followed the rules. They've abided by the law. They've done what they were told a good citizen should do. They worked. They saved. They paid their taxes. They sent their kids to school. They went to church. They did all the things under the implicit promise from the institutions that serve them that doing the right thing will lead to living a good life. Because it should. Working and serving and earning and building, these things should result in a good life well lived. But increasingly, they don't. Increasingly, the harder you work, the less you have. The more you serve, the more you build, the more is taken from you. It's almost as if we're living under the premise, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Where have we heard that before? We're here today to talk about freedom, but we must first address this sense that I'm describing, this tension that we all feel about our own ability to live our lives. Because I think a lot of people, even today, even now in Biden's America, even now under the rule of Tim Walz, a lot of people would still say, and we sang earlier today, that this is the land of the free. But is it? Is it still? Well, first, we must know exactly what freedom is. And I think we need to start by examining what it's not. Freedom is not merely relief from tyranny. It's not just being left alone to live your life whatever way you see fit. For instance, the Israelites were not freed from slavery in Egypt so that they could go on vacation in the wilderness. They were not freed so that they could become like the other nations around them. They were freed so that they could receive the law and then live under it. And it was only in faithfulness to that that they found liberty. Liberty by law, liberty through law, liberty under law. It's not enough to have the boot lifted from your throat. You must also be empowered under the law to live your life with productivity and virtue. God could have made us plants instead of animals. He could have designed us to be solar powered. We could get our food from the sun. He could have designed us to sink our roots down into the ground and soak up whatever water happened by. Instead, he designed us in such a way that even the laziest among us must still lift their hand to their mouth in order to eat. You have to put some effort into it. You have to go out and seek or create your food in the first place. We have to work. Even the Garden of Eden had to be tended. Adam had work. Eve was his helper. Helping him what? Helping him work. They operated prior to the fall with extraordinary liberty. What did God say? You may eat from any tree in the garden. Any tree. They had liberty. They had options. They had freedom to act productively and sustain their lives, but they were also required to exhibit virtue. They were required to abide by God's one rule, his one boundary. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. Their virtue was exhibited by their obedience to this one rule, to the law. And of course, we know what happened, and we all suffer as a result of it. But that first human story, that beginning of our history as a race, tells us everything we need to know about freedom. Freedom is not just the absence of tyranny, it is the ability to live productively and virtuously under a law which both upholds our rights and holds us responsible to our responsibilities. And it is in this that the governing Democrat trifecta in Minnesota has failed tremendously. As we tick down the list, and we've already done so quite a bit today, the list of legislation enacted from this year's session, it's a laundry list of irresponsibility. A $17.5 billion surplus spent, raising $10 billion in new taxes, enabling children to be killed, not just in the womb, but from neglect and exposure as they're left to expire on a medical table. Their approach to public safety started from the premise that every criminal is a victim, every cop is a criminal, and victims of crime, well, we're not even going to think too much about them. They banned 80% of current energy production in our state with no credible plan to replace it. We call it the blackout bill because that's what it's going to do to our state. They imposed mandates on our schools and our businesses. They violated our freedoms of speech, religion, and association in every way short of putting us into camps, which they came damn near to during the lockdowns. Democrats in this state have treated us like slaves. Not only is there boot on our throat in the form of unworkable mandates and egregious taxes and violations of our personal and civil liberties, but they've also erected a passive tyranny where you can't live your life the way you would like because it's not safe to walk down the street, or because you can't afford it, or perhaps in a few years because you can't even turn your lights on. Freedom requires righteous law. It requires law that upholds your rights, holds you accountable for your responsibilities, and maintains fair weights and measures so you may be able to reliably count on the profitable harvest from your yearly labor. That's what the law should be. And when it's not, when it's abused, when it violates rights instead of upholding them, when it both affects and enables irresponsibility, places the thumb of the state on the scale to pick winners and losers, and pit neighbor against neighbor, and divide the race of men by skin color and gender and every form of narcissistic identity. When it does those things, it enslaves us all, even the people who voted for it, perhaps especially them. This is our civic gospel. This is our good news. It's the good news applied to the ministry of the state. All we do is ministry. Voting, legislating, advocating. It's all a ministry. You and I have been called to this ministry. How do I know? You're standing here. We've been called to proclaim our civic gospel, to preach liberty under the law so that man may live free. Join together. Join us all. Join each other. And let's conquer the promised land from the lawless hordes that feel so safe behind the walls of Jericho. Let's march around that city blowing horns of liberty and shouting the great war cry of freedom, and then watch in awe, giving glory to our God as the walls of our enemy fall. Thank you.
Amen.
God bless you, and God restore the state of Minnesota.